Okay. Good evening. I'm Hanson Mulford, curator at the Orlando Museum of Art. I would like to begin with the acknowledgement that we are meeting on the homeland and unceded territory of the Seminole. We honor their stewardship of this land, their distinguished history, and their ongoing contributions to the life and culture of Florida. Welcome to Invisible Together, a panel discussion about the project Blixel Restock Image Collection. Multimedia artist Kenya Robinson leads this project, which is designed to address the underrepresentation of people of African descent in stock photo imagery. With this project, the museum and the artist aim to establish a volunteer network of stock image collection sites in the form of photo locations. These locations, photographers, visual editors, and participating models may donate their time, expertise, and visage. The project is funded in part by United Arts of Central Florida. To bring on board more satellite photography locations and volunteer photographers, Kenya has enlisted the support of new media artists and technologists, Jillian Marie Browning and Lejeune Macmillian, who will provide instructional kits outlining minimum equipment requirements and best practices for setting up a collection site. Together in this webinar moderated by Dr. Portia Moore, the artists will share more about the project and their practice. Following this, there will be a Q&A. Introducing our panelists and moderator is the museum's associate curator, Coralie Claesson-Glazen. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Coralie Claesson-Glazen, and I'm the associate curator at the Orlando Museum of Art. I would like to introduce tonight's panelists and moderator. First of all, Kenya Robinson is an American multimedia artist whose work includes performance, sculpture, and installation. A native of Gainesville, Florida, Robinson's work depicts themes of privilege and consumerism, exploring perceptions of gender, race, and ability. Combining a variety of audio-visual elements and live performance, Robinson's work has been shown at the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, New York, the Kitchen in New York, the Museum of Contemporary African Diasporan Art, Moacada, New York, among many others. She has lectured at Hampshire College, Long Island University, and the University of Florida. A participant observer of social media, Robinson, who chooses to have her last name placed in parentheses, documents her work on her YouTube channel, Kenya Nyla, an Instagram account at Kenya9. She earned an MFA in sculpture from the School of Art at Yale University in 2013. In 2008, Robinson was the recipient of the Florida Prize in Contemporary Art at the Orlando Museum of Art. This new project, entitled Blixel, will enable the artist and OMA to further their relationship, offer interactive programming within the museum, and provide expanded spaces for community collaboration. Our second panelist is Lejeune Macmillian. Lejeune is a new media artist and creative technologist, creating art that integrates performance, virtual reality, and physical computing to question our current forms of communication. Lejeune has had the opportunity to show and speak about their work at Pioneer Works, National Sawdust, Leaders in Software and Art, Creative Tech Week, and Art and Encode's Weird Reality. Lejeune was previously the director of skating at Figure Skating in Harlem, where they integrated STEAM and figure skating to teach girls of color about movement and technology. They have continued their research on Blackness, movement, and technology during residencies at I-Beam, Pioneer Works, Barbarian Group, and Barnard College. Our third panelist for the evening is Jillian Mary Browning. Jillian is an interdisciplinary artist pursuing themes of feminism, identity, and the contemporary Black experience. Born in Ocala, Florida, they received a Bachelor of Science in Photography from the University of Central Florida in 2012 and a Master's of Fine Arts degree in Studio Art from Florida State University in 2015. They have had their work shown nationally as well as been included in the permanent collection of the Center for Photography at Woodstock and the University of Maryland's David C. Driscoll Center for the Study of Visual Arts and Culture of African Americans and the African Diaspora. They currently work for the School of Art and Art History at the University of Florida. And last but not least, our moderator for the evening is Dr. Portia Moore. Dr. Moore received her PhD from the University of South Carolina in the School of Library and Information Science and the McKissick Museum Management Program. She serves on the Professional Development Committee for the South Carolina Federation of Museums. Moore is a board member for the Friends of African American Art Committee at the Columbia Museum of Art. She presents internationally at both museum and library conferences regularly. She is a regular contributing writer for the Incluseum. She has appeared on Carol Bossert's Museum Life radio program and has multiple publications regarding her research interests: racial inclusion, community engagement, critical race theory, convergence issues in 21st century cultural heritage institutions, representation of racial identities in the digital landscape, and LIS curriculum reform. She has served on the planning team for museum conferences such as Museum Computer Network. She currently is an assistant professor in the School of Art and Art History at the University of Florida and is co-creator of the Visitors of Color project. You can follow her at Portia Museum and hire her at portiaprojects@gmail.com or just send her an email to chat. We are very lucky to have these 4 incredible speakers for tonight's program. I hope you enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I want to thank you to the Orlando Museum of Art, and I'm so excited for this talk. I've been looking forward to it for a while. I want to begin tonight by saying that I am moderating from Gainesville, Florida, from land stewarded by the Seminole and Temecula people. I also want to honor all First Nation and Indigenous people on ceded and unceded lands across what we now recognize as the state of Florida. And in addition, I also want to acknowledge the Black Indigenous people of this region as well, and all living descendants of the Seminole and Temecula people. So in our talk tonight, which I love the title, Invisible Together, I love that. We are talking about visibility, Blackness, technology, and surveillance. And I want to begin with you, Kenya. I want to ask you to help us frame our talk tonight. I want you to begin our conversation by explaining to us about your project in development, Blixel. What is it? What are the problems that you are attempting to solve with this project? And then after your response, I'd like for the other panelists to weigh in on Blixel. And as fellow artists, what do you see is the importance of Blixel, and how has your own work intersected with many of the issues that Kenya's project seeks to address?
Blixel is kind of broadly began as a pursuit of material. So I've been creating these what I call book objects that are modeled after what is commonly referred to urban fiction, which are typically romance, thriller, comedy accounts that focus in chocolate cities and feature Black characters. And I just like them as like their covers are certainly very stylized. And as an artist, I was just attracted to that. And then when I would read them, I would get this piece of cultural information that it's easy to dismiss because of the format of like the romance novel, but it had these layers of meaning that I'm like, okay, 50 years from now, somebody's going to be writing a dissertation about this. So I don't actually want to wait for that. I want to create these objects that elevate that vernacular. Now, when I'm making these books, I need human people. I need Black people to be doing all kinds of stuff. I mean, I have some crime sleuthing cosmetologists. I got a baby daddy that's got 11 baby mamas. I got, some forensic scientists that work with the sheriff's department, all in all of these various books. And I would be looking for them to be doing like normal things. Like one book is called Two Piece in a Biscuit. It's about a digital fight club for angry Black women. And I just wanted to find a picture of a Black woman like wrapping her hands for a kickboxing class. Mm-hmm. Could not find a single image of a Black woman, a melanated woman, identifiably so, that was wrapping her hands. So I cheated and I colored it in. And in the context of the image, it's okay, but there's a limitation, because if I want to print it larger, it's going to be very obvious, because you can't really get the richness of the skin tone by like kind of coloring it in digitally. And so I noticed that, and I found myself having to use a lot of celebrities, which put another spin on the works themselves. Mm-hmm. When I put the celebrity or a known person on the cover, then I bring all that other stuff with it. But it's like, I know people that I've gone to a kickboxing class, I've blown out candles on a birthday cake. I've gone roller skating. I've taken a selfie. And it would be very difficult for me to find these images in platforms that I was actually paying a fee for. So I actually have known Lejeune for a number of years, and this concept of a library was kind of like that seed was planted in my mind in terms of like motion capture and these avatars that were being created. But I speak internet but with an accent, so I needed to kind of go a little bit more basic. I just want a picture. I just want a JPEG. I didn't want anything special. And so my conversations with Coralie, I was able to express this desire and move forward with, a partnership that would help support making this happen, and that it didn't have to be this kind of rarefied experience. It could be something that was, typified, and that kind of normalization, as it were, through visibility, could do some really, in my opinion, anti-racist work.
Thank you, Kenya. So Jillian and Lejeune, if you could kind of weigh in, how do you see yourself in the things that Kenya's bringing up in terms of visibility and access and imagery?
When Kenya first approached me and asked me to be a part of this particular project, I was super excited actually, because my entire background is in commercial photography. So when Kenya like, okay, well, I want like a photograph, we want to photograph Black, we want them to look a certain way. So I was like, actually, like, this is 100% what I do and what I teach, and like I can be a part of this. But also, like, it's the importance as well of how these Black people are depicted in the work. So yes, you can get pictures of Black people all you want to, but if the imagery is not good or the imagery doesn't represent people well, then kind of what's the point? Why does it exist? And we can also see the importance of how to graph Black people and also how depicted in media and also in images by like every picture that Annie Leibovitz has ever taken a Black person, because every single one of them looks really bad. So it's important to kind of understand too that like there is a way that you would photograph people of color that would be different than you photograph different people. So kind of something that I really focused on with the project was making sure that the correct pictures and good and pictures that are usable people within this project, because if we don't get good quality imagery where people are well lit, then kind of what's the point of even doing this, you know?
Thank you so much, Jillian. Jillian, I do want to say we're getting a little bit of feedback from you. I'm not sure if you need to maybe turn down something. I also want to say, let me backtrack just a little bit because I forgot to inform the audience. So I want to ask the audience to make sure that they are participating. So we have a couple of different functions and a couple of different ways for you to participate. So the first one is to please make sure that you are engaging in the chat function. We want to see, any kind of dialogue and communication there. But in particular, there's a Q&A section. So we're really asking and wanting you to drop any questions in the Q&A function, and then we'll be taking questions around 6:50, as many questions as we possibly can before we end our conversation tonight. I also want to remind you to please drop also in the chat, tell us where you are, tell us where you're viewing from, and then also be sure to follow all of us on social media, but in particular, follow the Orlando Museum of Art at Orlando Museum of Art, all one word. And then in particular, follow the Blixel Project at Blix, B-L-I-X, Pix, P-I-X. So at Blix Pix. All right, thank you. Lejeune.
Yeah, so I met Kenya like a few years ago, and we've been friends ever since. And yeah, I literally actually Kenya was one of the first people that I came to with like my library project for Black Movement Library, and she inspired me to think bigger than like just a database set. And I guess I can give you like a little background on what I was interested in the beginning. I come from a motion capture background. So just to give a little, I guess like description of what that is. Motion capture is essentially like data that's extracted from people who perform movements. And that data is used for various animation purposes, as well as gaming purposes. It's used in a lot of movies as well. And I was coming at it from a more like artistic standpoint as an artist. And for me, I was really frustrated that there was a lack of representation in motion capture data, or in various different motion capture data in libraries that were already available. But then also on the flip side of that, when there was representation, there was an erasure of the person who actually performed those movements. So like with pictures and photography, like it's very visual, but with motion capture, it's very just like, it's literally just like numbers. So numbers that are strung together to create a skeleton that you then place onto a character. So you basically see like this history of this extraction of data from the body in all of these different and various ways. I guess that also then brought me to and what I've really been in conversation with Kenya about as well is how these digital softwares have a history of racism embedded within how they're made and how they're built and who builds them. And in that sense, it sort of creates an environment for a lot of these different problems of representation to persist. And actually what I'm learning now is it's not even less necessarily just like for Black folks, but for everyone who are engaging with these technologies. You know, having your data extracted from your body in different ways basically is in the ways in which we see it today through like digital platforms and through society is just a really dehumanizing practice. So what does it mean to bring back the body, to bring back our embodiment, our embodied experiences and our humanity into these different softwares, tools, technologies, and society? So yeah, I guess I just say that to say like all of these technologies are a reflection of society. And you can see basically a lot of these technologies reinforcing the systemic injustices that we see throughout our lives today. So yeah.
Ooh, Lejeune, that was that was good. Thank you. That was actually a perfect segue to my next question, which is one of the scholars, activists, brilliant folks that I absolutely love and that I read a lot and follow a lot and am inspired by is Adrian Maree Brown. And Adrian Maree Brown, she's not the first person to talk about this, but she does talk about it, I think, in a 21st century context that I think is so accessible. So she talks about, and she just recently said that Black people live inside of imaginations that do not love us. So when you talk about like extraction and embodiment and how do we return to the body and how do we reclaim our body, I want to ask you all, what is the relationship between the work that each of you produces and public imagination? Are you in tension with it? Do you seek to be in tension with it intentionally? And are we forever bound to the limits of other people's imaginations and to the politics of recognition? And I'm taking that phrase, the politics of recognition, from some works and articles that I read about Toni Morrison. So again, I'll just repeat myself one more time. Black people live inside of imaginations that do not love us. So what is the relationship between the work that each of you produces and public imagination? And are we forever bound to the limits of other people's imaginations and the politics of recognition?
I watched, I mean, you know, Disney has this real stronghold in our collective imagination within the United States, but then in particular in Florida with Disney World and all that stuff. And I remember, I'll never forget, I like have watched every Disney movie. I mean, Cinderella, Little Mermaid, just all of it. And I've been completely conditioned by the various presentations. But I remember watching The Princess and the Frog, and it was this huge brouhaha about the first Black princess. And I'll never forget, like I want to say it was like the introduction, and it's like a streetcar that's going from like the fancy white rich side of town to where Princess or Tiana lives. And it's like, that's the most realistic I've ever seen any environment. And I was like, this is like, there wasn't even a space, because all of this is made up. The fact that somebody could turn into a frog because of a curse is a made up thing. Mm-hmm. A mermaid is a made up thing. A relationship, I mean, you know, it's Florida, with a beast is a made up thing. But somehow it had to be like realistic. And this is a part of why I am like these books are kind of like, they are imagined, because this is where it's coming from, right? It's imagined as these kind of like comedically absurd and also like very imaginative spaces. And I find often that not only does the imagination not love us, but it is so tied to this like you can find a lot of images, stock images of Black people in the gritty inner city.
Yes.
But you can't find a stock image of, I recently like searched for, the search term were birthday and people. Like a birthday is like a magical time. Like you have this flame and you make a wish and your family is with you and it's all these bright colors. And I would say like there are like maybe 50 to 100 assets that you can see like before you have to scroll. And maybe there was one Black person. Maybe there was one Black kid. There were definitely no seniors. So even the kind of everyday magic of a birthday celebration, which in my lived Black experience is a whole extravaganza of electric slide, of music, of good food, of cake, of red drink, of like all of that stuff. And the fact that you don't even have the material, the visual material that's just kind of out there to like go beyond to that space that's like, you know, beyond the imagination, which is where creativity happens.
That reminds me of, and please remind me of the artist if you can recall the name. Another artist that I absolutely love and adore is Vanessa German. And Vanessa German, I remember posted, I forgot the artist's name, but it's basically it's like a billboard or something painted on a wall. But it was basically the phrase, "There are Black people in the future." And I think that that's also an extension of what you just said, Kenya, the fact that there are Black people in the future. And because there is a future, we can dream and we can imagine and we can there's a whole other space that's waiting there for us. So yeah, I'd like for the rest of you all to maybe jump in and add on to that. You know, if we're living in other people's imaginations and they do not love us, then what's that relationship between the work that you all do in public imagination?
You can go, Lejeune. So my own personal work is primarily self-portraits. So when I'm making work and when I'm showing my work and my work, I am physically and metaphorically, but mostly physically parting my blackness to anyone that looks at my work. It's all pictures of my body or parts that you can see. The work that I make and the stories that I'm telling are about a Black experience. So when I was making this, when I started like creating my art practice and stuff, it was just kind of like, well, I want to tell stories about me, so I'm going to use myself. But then it all became pretty noticeable to me when people would see my work and other like Black people, other Black women would see my work, and they would tell me all the time, like, I don't feel that look like me in art. When I go places, I don't see people that look like me, or if I do, it's not made by someone who identifies as me. So it's often exploitative or it's stuff along those. And so being able to like create narrative, but also control narrative and having depicted within that work is, you know, a big part of what I do. And then also, I like to be able to control that narrative and also like be there to talk and have those conversations with people and about the things that I'm saying, because like there's a big part that I do is a lot about hair and hair culture and how it feels within Black community, and also how that is to other people. And there's actually a piece of something that I was working on. I was writing about, you know, Black female hair culture and then Black female hair ritual, and the idea that oftentimes Black women's hair is considered unprofessional, and the idea that you can literally Google the term professional hairstyle and Google images. It's all just white women, straight hair. You Google unprofessional hairstyle, and it's just Black men. It's just locks, it's afros, it's all of that. And But like that, I think is also a big too, is like when you create like this particular project, when working on this stock imagery and people that are not white and it's not, you know, considered a new thing, and these people differently, you'll be able to switch that narrative that these particular people are wrong. Curly hair and afros and locks are not professional hairstyles. They are literally hairstyles grow out of people's heads, you know? So like it's switching up that norm and be able to control that narrative.
Jillian, I appreciate that comment so much. And I actually want to use this moment to engage folks who are viewing in a sort of different way in this second. So you're talking about, you know, this notion of like Black women's hair not being professional. It immediately makes me think of the work of Endia Beal. Her name is spelled Endia, Beal, Beal. She has this whole series where she flips it, right? So she has white women in corporate business attire rocking Black women's hairstyles, right? Totally flips it. I'll drop that in the chat. So I want to take this moment for all of our participants. We're talking about being invisible together, right? So let's take this moment for all of us to share and think about and drop in the chat names of artists, particular artists of color that need visibility, whose work deserves merit and whose work deserves acclaim. So let's go ahead, if you can, drop some names in the chat so that we can continue to augment our own collective body of knowledge. And then Lejeune, I'll have you respond to that and then we'll move on to the next question.
Wait, should I respond right now?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So
Oh, sorry.
about just the limits of imagination and all of that.
Yeah, so I feel like for me, it's transitioned a lot. My ideas around this have transitioned a lot. Right now, I honestly feel like I've honestly like sort of given up on the, I guess like this imagination for the most part, mainly because I feel like it takes up a lot of time and effort to try to place myself into this imagination. I'm really interested in right now in my work and in my practice, and sort of what Kenya was speaking about a little bit earlier about what's beyond the imagination and tapping into that. I've been doing a lot of work with I guess like myself, with my body, with my own embodied practice to sort of understand, to sort of actually, I guess, like strip away like that need to be in that imagination through like an embodied practice, right? So it is a lot of like meditation, a lot of movement work, a lot of like movement with others, a lot of conversation, and also a lot of setting intentions to manifest. So I've been doing a lot of work with creating manifestos with different groups of people that I am in community with. So when we come together, we set intentions on how we want our relationships to be, on how we want to see each other in that space, on how we want to engage with one another, and what that looks like and what that means for us in this space. I think that, like, I guess like my dream would be that this approach would be taken then, or this approach would be taken then on a more like global scale. How do we get people to start seeing other people, but also how do we get people to start seeing themselves? Like, you know, a lot of us don't get to see ourselves. So how do we start getting people to see themselves and to see other people in their full humanity, in their full being? And then from there, we can craft an entirely new imagination, an entirely new way of seeing and being in community with one another.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's excellent.
I was talking to a woman to Tanya, who is a professional artist model. And she actually told me about a book called How to Draw Black People. I can't wait to add that to my library. But she was mentioning at the fact, I mean, that's how she makes the bulk of her living. So she's been with a lot of different groups of people in life drawing classes. And it's like they can draw her body, but as soon as they get to her face, they don't, it's like they can't look at it. Like, I feel like there was like some Dark Mirror episode where like once you got this chip out of you, you couldn't see the people's faces and it was like muffled and everything if you kind of were out of that loop. And I think that the ism causes that. Like you are looking and you have the skill to represent this person that you are drawing accurately, but it's a lot of monkey faces. It's a lot of Sambo stuff going on. It's like one of the things that I think is so impactful. It's like a blindness that is instituted by the conditioning of only seeing one kind of person. Mm-hmm. So it's like they literally, because we know that vision is not just the light hitting your retina or whatever. It also has to do with memory, because that's how you can tell it's still me, even though I have this new hair. Or when you recognize somebody, even when they get a haircut, because you remember what they look like. But the memory is so screwed up when it's outside of this established norm, that it's like a blindness. And that doesn't happen to people on the outside, like Lejeune said. It's like, how do I see myself?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think, oh God, that was so brilliant. Because I'm thinking about like this, I've been thinking about this a lot actually in preparation for today. And I was trying to figure out like, what is the thing? I kept churning something, but I think what I'm asking is a couple things. That conditioning, if we know that if we have that awareness that it exists, then whose responsibility is it then for us to create these images? And is it that we don't have images? Because look at the role and function of Instagram. Look at the role and function of media-based platforms that focus on art. So is it Black creatives? Is it Black artists? Is it institutions? Is it technology? Is it Google? Like who's responsible? Who takes the onus then to help stop the conditioning? Because I think that's the thing I've been churning a lot in anticipation of today. Whose responsibility is it? And can we say, like, I don't know. I mean, are we supposed to now mine IG? Like, can we just mine IG? Can we just mine IG, like Black IG, Black Twitter, to get all the things that we need? Or is it responsibility of institutions? And I guess it's a two-part question, because as a museum person, as a museum scholar, I'm always interrogating institutions, particularly museums. So what's the role of museums in helping to perpetuate this conditioning? So I guess it's a two-part question. How do museums perpetuate the conditioning? And then also, in addition to museums or outside of institutions, whose role and responsibility is it for us to put more imagery out there?
I think I can start. I have two things. So the first thing is, it's all of our responsibility. It's all of our responsibility. It's our own personal responsibility to ourselves to be seen how we want to be seen. It's each other's responsibilities to basically deconstruct that conditioning that we have placed on our bodies and how we see ourselves in other people. That said, I think that, gosh, I'm like losing. Oh man, I had another thing to say, but yeah, it's all of our responsibilities. And I guess like when it comes to institutions, Yeah, I think that an institution is also made up of people. I think that a lot of times we forget that we are creating our mini little systems within larger systems. We're creating our own ecosystems within larger ecosystems. So if we just like sort of get the ball rolling, I think that the more people that do this work for themselves, and the thing is like, honestly, like when everyone does this work, we all collectively, like, we do better in life, So I think that once we all start to do this work, then I feel like it can sort of just like expand outward. But at least that's like what I'm trying to like experiment with now.
Mhm. I just have to, I'm looking at the chat, I have to call out something that Dwayne Cyrus said. Dwayne said the memory synapse is distorted by historical oppressions. And I just have to snap on that because it exactly expands what Kenya was also just talking about. I also want to let everyone know that in about 10 minutes, we'll be going to the Q&A portion. So please make sure that you drop your questions in that Q&A form. I guess another question that I would have for us is, what do you all as artists know for sure is an automatic condition or pathway for being rendered invisible? What do you know for sure are the conditions for rendering you invisible? And are there any benefits to being invisible?
Yes. Credibility is one of, it's a survival a survival tool that has been withheld from Black people systemically and Black women in particular. So like when Tarana Burke started the Me Too, she had been saying it for years, but it's like she wasn't credible because of her Black femme embodiment. And this happens often, you have to fight for credibility is a really energy sucking experience. And what happens is that if somebody doesn't believe you, it's like it didn't happen. It's like it didn't exist. So that is something that institutions as a whole, in my experience, have, that's like kind of across the board what happens a lot. And it's been in every institution that I've worked with. That being said, it's forced me to utilize mouthpieces. So it's forced me to find ways to take response, because I'm not gonna look messed up. Like, we gonna get the lights. Everybody gonna look good. Because the art has to, that's what art has to do. It has to be engaging aesthetically. That's one of the parts of it. Or it's not that. So I realized that what I have to do is I have to, one, the invisibility is a way to camouflage oneself because a Black embodiment means that you're targeted. So if you can strategically deploy invisibility, like Harry Potter, like if you can take it off and put it on, if there's a flexibility in that, because invisibility in and of itself isn't bad. Like it's in nature. Like sometimes you need to be invisible so the predator doesn't eat your ass up. I'm sorry. Anyway, so I'm working on ways personally so that I can deploy the invisibility at will and it's not imposed on me.
That's good.
So, yeah.
Good. Any response to that? That was good. Where are we buying these invisibility cloaks at? Who's making that?
It's beyond your imagination.
Ajane?
I have a response, and I do, like, it actually is tied to what I was about to say the last time. Consent. Consent. So when you were talking about the Instagram photos and the Black Twitter, like, if you don't have the consent from them to take their stuff, or at least some sort of, you know, known lines of like how you're going to use this data for your own work, then you really shouldn't be using that. You really shouldn't be using all of that stuff. So yeah, and with that said, it's like yeah, consent goes a long way, and that consent also with invisibility. I give you consent to see me, and I give you the consent to see me in this way. I feel like going back to like the past question for me, I feel like the most dehumanizing thing is when you take away someone's consent from them and you say, like, you know, this is how I'm going to like deal with you, be with you, without even asking you, or having a sort of equal level power dynamic going in between the sort of conversation. So yeah.
That was good. Jillian?
I would say for me, I like to fly under the radar. I like to maybe even that invisibility. Like I don't like being perceived really, but I also have a really hard time shutting up and not speaking up or something if something is it bothers me. So then I'm kind of like that line between like, okay, I'm gonna like be in the background. I'm gonna listen, and I'm not really engaged. And then something happens, and I'm gonna have to engage now. What am I supposed to be quiet? I'm not gonna be quiet. So like it's that I have like an issue with that like idea that, you know, being in the background and being invisible maybe isn't a bad thing, but then I'm just throwing off that invisibility cloak, help somebody off if I have to, like something happens. So.
That's a good point. Also, this is super random in a way. But also, you know, I'm looking at all of us on the screen and I'm just like loving the fact that this is, you know, a panel with all these phenomenal Black women. But I'm also thinking about the ways, again, in which as soon as the notion about like diversity, equity, access, and inclusion shows up in the room, you're going to be made so visible. The wattage is going to be so strong that there's no cloak that you can utilize, right? And that's just a random thought, but like that, it's interesting to me about also, I love what Lejeune said about, I give you consent to see me in this way, but it's a whole other thing when then people try to see you in a way that benefits whatever is their, as Kenya likes to say, whatever is their ism. That's something that I think we all navigate. So I'm looking at the time. I know we have one or two questions, but I think what I want to ask before we hit the questions, like I said, I've been thinking a lot about Toni Morrison. I know someone wrote in the chat about, you know, references to Toni Morrison as well. In an interview, Toni Morrison once talked about, you know, she's always getting that question about, why don't you center white people? Why don't you center whiteness? Like, why are all of your books about Black people? And one of her responses was essentially, if you can imagine a diamond and how there are facets in a diamond, for her only rationale for existing is to claim her space in that facet of the diamond. And that's the world and imagination in which she's creating and lives from. And that's her strength. So I've been thinking about that in terms of sort of extending that metaphor a little bit and thinking about the frame, how we frame tonight's conversation about Kenya's developing project on Blixel. And I really started to think about, okay, well, what is a pixel? Like, what is it? And so I'm just going to quickly read the definition, which I know that you all know, but listen for the audience. A pixel is a minute area of illumination on a display screen, one of many from which an image is composed. A unit of digital image length, the smallest controllable element of a picture represented, usually on a screen. So I guess in closing, I'd like for you all to kind of imagine yourself, if you are a pixel, the same way in which Toni Morrison talks about being a facet of a diamond, what is the thing that you are illuminating as an artist? Which I know is a kind of long question, but I could not separate myself in talking tonight from that imagery in my head. So if you all are a pixel, what are you illuminating, and how do you have control over that? So when you all answer that, then we'll move on to our question before we close out.
Blackness is universal. Humanity is a universal experience. I'm not more human than you, or you, or you, or you, or you, or you. The body is a closed system. It's dark in there, it's black in there. Everybody black.
Where's the offering plate? Okay. Maybe I need to get some hair. Lejeune or Jillian?
I'll go next. Yeah, no, just to add on that, Blackness is expansive, you know? The universe is Black. And for me, as an artist, I am a living embodiment of my ancestors. I go to my altar and I serve them, you know, and I serve spirit. And I want that to illuminate through the work that I create. Actually, now I'm even stepping away from the word create through the work that I discover through building, or, you know, through my hands at the computer, in the world around me. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that.
I will say a mixture of what both of them are saying like my work is primarily self-portraiture, so I am using my body as a Black in the world and with my Black femme experiences, but that doesn't necessarily mean that my experiences are any different than someone else's experiences. You're every as a person, and I don't necessarily particularly make work that only somebody who looks like me can understand. But I'm hoping that it opens up an eye, or it makes somebody find a voice and having a conversation maybe they're uncomfortable to have. Yeah, mostly everybody is a person. You know, my body is a body, but also your body. So.
Oh, I love that. Thank you all. I think that's a brilliant way. So I'm going to move on to the question. So we have a question that's coming in from our beloved Dr. Jillian Hernandez. Jillian writes, I would love to hear more about your process moving forward with the project in terms of composing images and engaging communities. I think that's to Kenya.
I mean, it's been, I'm just always thinking about it now, you know, and I recently got had a conversation, because like this whole birthday, my dad just had a birthday, like a kind of a milestone 70-year-old birthday. And I was thinking about the fact that I couldn't find these birthday cake scenes. So I am working with a cake artist, basically, that's based in Orlando, and she gonna make these like cakes. I'm sending her like a mood board, and it's gonna like look like Dutch wax, because she can like do everything, and it's gonna look like Dutch wax prints, kente prints. That I'm thinking about the color palette, the objects, and just being able to have that conversation with her, and recognizing that activism can take so many forms. I'm kind of like asking anybody, we have a set of lights that are going to live at the Orlando Museum of Art that Jillian is crafting a whole like how to. Also, there's going to be some video that Lejeune is going to give us insight on how to like best capture that data can be then used in a more interactive virtual context. And I just want to make it as kind of normalized as possible. Like because of the internet, you have access to all this high level equipment. You don't have to be a professional to get a quality that is that level. And I'm like, I can set up a studio in my house and be like, oh, maybe some homies are just coming over to hang out. And I'm saying, I want to be able to take a few pictures of you taking a selfie, I'm actually preparing to take photographs of a local artist who's a writer and a performer and a mother whose daughter happens to use a wheelchair. Like, that's a story, that interaction. I'm really going just to hang out with her, but I have the materials to capture images with her consent. I asked her, that can absolutely be included in this, that it's not outside, like my art practice isn't like over here and then my life is here. It's all integrated.
Thank you, Kenya. We have one more question from Ann Gilroy. Hey, Ann. Regarding stock photographs, responsibility, consent, invisibility, and figure modeling or art classes in particular, I'd love to hear more about how each of you hopes white allies might advocate for and actively seek out Black representation in art without tokenizing, exotifying, or objectifying those individuals.
I think really it's really like listening, like not just like hearing us, like really listening and hearing us. We all come to different spaces with a different set of needs, and being able to hear those needs out and being able to see what you can bring to those needs, that is what's important. And also committing to basically what I was saying before, with just really doing that inner work of seeing yourself and seeing other people, and taking note of how it is that you see and view yourself in the world, how it is that in which you see other people in the world, Black folks in the world, what does that look like? And when you do that work all the time, right? Like don't just have it be like this one time, oh, I did this one thing one time. Like every day, come fully as you are. Don't leave anything at the door, so that we can all fully bring ourselves to different spaces, and not I guess like cloud ourselves with the isms. So yeah.
Thank you. Jillian, do you have anything to add?
I would add in terms of the idea of talking about like without tokenizing or exoting, bringing people, like just understand that a Black person is still a human person, but also like if you start exoting and defining people when you stop thinking of them as people. Also, you're not tokenizing if you are introducing a a non-white person into a classroom or a place, but also if they're not like the only one, that's also how you help that as well. It's not this is the one Black that I'm bringing to my entire, you know, semesters long of this class. Like it's, you know, think of it in that way as well. Black people, we said that several times tonight, but literally that.
All right, that was perfect. So it is 7 o'clock. That's our time. I want to thank each and every participant tonight for joining us. I want to, first of all, thank everyone for dropping the names of all of the artists that deserve to continue to have visibility. That is an exceptional list. Thank you. I'm excited to explore some of the names that were mentioned. I want to thank the Orlando Museum of Art. Special thanks to Kenya Robinson, Jillian Marie Browning, and Lejeune Macmillian. Thank you all. Thank you, Hanson. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone, so much. Make sure that you follow at BlixPix and at Orlando Museum of Art. Follow all of us. We're all on Twitter, IG, everything, all the platforms. And this recording will be available on the Orlando Museum of Art's YouTube education page. All right. Thank you, everyone. Good night.